Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're dialing in from. I'm John Walls from Looker. I'm going to leave it a minute or two before I start into the substance of the talk itself, but thanks very much for joining us today. Okay, so welcome. This is data analytics you can count on. I am one of the enterprise data consultants at Looker. I'm based in our London office. Today, this talk is going to focus on what we're doing in the financial industry for both fintechs and established players. I'll start off by introducing Looker, the company. We see our mission as empowering people with the smarter use of data. So in broad terms, for a corporation or for a fintech, how to make real use of the operational data that you have, moving away from just kind of traditional historical reporting style functions to something that is a little bit more alive, a little bit smarter in the way that we build ourselves into the processes of a company. We have a variety of partners. We partner with all the major database providers in a technology sense, and we're also available on a variety of clouds for our SaaS offering. We have around 800 employees around the globe, 2,000 customers, quite interesting, 5,000 or more developers. So that's 1 in 2 of our customers are not just using us for business intelligence, but actually integrating us into workflows or applications of their own. And with respect to the finance industry, well, I'm based in London. We also have offices in New York and Tokyo. And the company itself is based out of California with the headquarters in Santa Cruz, just by Silicon Valley. There's 2 big takeaways for this talk in terms of, what does Looker do? What does it represent to our customers? The first is this web-based analytics and self-service reporting. So we're a modern business intelligence platform, providing dashboards, providing the ability to do self-service metrics and queries, scheduling and alerting, all the things that you would hope for a modern cloud-based analytics tool. And that is, the core part of our business. But also, those 1 in 2 customers using us for something additional, it's important to know that we provide a broad capability for secure governed access to data. So there's a screenshot there from one of our customers in the payment sector that handles credit card payments for customers all the way up to the size of Walmart, but also down to the mom and pop shops, as they're called, very small traders. And what we're doing there is we have a semantic layer that we'll touch on later. We have an ability to provide consistent metrics and secure access to data, highly segregated by customer or by department. And that doesn't necessarily need to be a business intelligence application. That might be any kind of application or workflow that makes sense to your business on top. So those are the 2 things. Modern BI online with a strong self-service capability, or alternatively just using us as an API for data, which can be used and embedded in a variety of ways. So let's talk a little bit about Looker in the financial sector, the kind of customers, the kind of projects that we're doing. I did this talk first time in September. In fact, just the day before the talk, it was nice to see, a number of our customers in the news, all on the one day, although we've had to take out some of the public, the non-public logos. But here's a couple we can talk about. We are very strong in the fintech sector, so we have one of Deutsche Bank's investments, a company called Deposit Solutions, who are kind of revolutionizing the way that deposit payments can be leveraged in the German market in particular. So we're helping them on the way to getting a strong valuation. And Go Cardless, based out of here in London, who look after recurring payments, so the direct debits in the UK market and the equivalents around the world, just opening up in the US. They're also operating in Australia, I believe, and throughout Europe. So these new companies, or we'll see some examples from traditional companies who are looking to drive new revenue, are doing building up these new digital ecosystems, you might say, internally within the company, as well as integrations with partners. And it's those environments where Looker really shines, due to the architecture that we'll be covering through the end of this presentation. So we're particularly strong in fintech because those are the companies that have the glorious opportunity, to build greenfield, to build on top of the new cloud platforms that are available. It is reflected in the same way that fintech, there's a heavy focus on payments. We're particularly strong in the payment sector, TransferWise there, for instance. But also, fintech is causing a little bit of an explosion of different ways in which a business can be opened up to finance. So, for instance, that counter there at the bottom, that's an industry point-of-sale system for the hospitality industry. And having analytics running on top of the payments flowing through, in this case, a separate industry, not finance anymore, is just one of those aspects where, financial services really are seeing a wide variety of new business models out there. And a comment there at the bottom for this next slide here, which is that we have a semantic layer for some of that's valuable to the more traditional players. So, for instance, at one of the top global payments companies, the value that we are providing is not so much the ability to do self-service business intelligence, but it's that governed layer that I was talking about, providing secure access to the data. So they have a model that is represented, that's built out in the US, representing consumer payments, and the data represented by that model is of value. So that is observing, consumer behavior. So that data is valuable, and that's something that they can essentially sell on. But what's important about this data is, particularly for regulatory compliance, it must stay segregated. So although they've got a model built in the US, they are able to reuse that model in China and in India, but those different regions do not have access to the data in the other regions. So we are providing a very pure API for data approach there that enables them to reuse a platform that they're building, enables them to build a business on top of that data, but is not providing access throughout the business to the different regions. They're able to apply a strong segregation. And we have a few examples like that, another one in an investment bank where we are providing the governance to the data, but the segregated access is important, and maybe even with a custom interface on top to meet their particular needs. So when Looker looks at the financial industry, when we try to see how we are relevant and what we are able to do, there's a few trends that you have probably all observed yourself that I think are particularly relevant. The first is that digital services are highly integrated these days. So all the screenshots here on the screen are coming from our customers' public websites. So Monzo, Challenger Bank, Go Cardless that we mentioned, providing the direct debit payments, they are providing APIs, to their partners and to their customers, so that new automated processes can be built. So that is, they are taking advantage of other companies' APIs to get data or to process transactions, or they are providing an API for which they might be processing transactions or accepting loan applications, whatever it might be the nature of their business. So these APIs are being seen more and more often, and these integrated end-to-end processes, possibly going across a number of platforms between the end user and the final financial institution, is very much a part of the financial market these days. And in a related trend to that, these services within themselves tend to be highly instrumented. So at every step of a particular process, there's a very high likelihood that each individual transaction is in some way raising an event or being logged. So not just the fact that there has been a payment made, but the process by which it was made, how long it took something to be approved, how long the fraud process took. So if GoCardless is bringing on a new merchant, for instance, they have to be validated. They have to be checked for not being essentially a bad player that they don't want to do business with. And that process is also instrumented and generating data. And a couple of big kind of outputs for that are good illustrations for why this is valuable as these companies, TransferWise and Simply Business. So TransferWise, a new peer-to-peer payment system, highly instrumented. The data is very much at the heart of how they run their business, to the extent that around 85% of the company, which is essentially to all intents and purposes, everyone in that company that needs access to data to help with decision making is an employee user. So that's an extremely high rate of adoption for a business intelligence tool. Because those data points, those events are happening essentially in real time, during the working day instead of historical reporting, they generate hundreds of operational alerts that actually drive behavior within their account. So if they have a particular channel or partner that is causing an issue or seems to be seeing a high error rate, for instance, that can get flagged up to the operational teams during the day that it's happening, instead of just being something observed on a dashboard after the event. And Simply Business, an aspect of what they do is instrumenting, so they provide insurance for small to medium businesses, and part of that is people both trying to discover products that might fit them and also applying for those insurance products. Those processes, again, they're instrumented, so they can see, for instance, where there are abandonment rates, where are people dropping out during the process, what products are proving to be the most popular, how quickly can we roll out new products or iterate on products if we're finding that there's aspects that need to change, whether that's in the product itself or the way they're being marketing. And this is numbers from them. They associate their deployment of Looker and their improvement of the use of data with a 1% approval in their conversion rate and a 9% revenue uplift against those new products. And all of that is coming from the fact that the instrumentation of these services generates vast quantities of data that Looker can use. We are seeing things such as new channels and business models. It is more likely that people are, finding out about or even applying for loans on their mobile phones. That might be for a challenger bank such as Monzo. You'll also see things like new metrics such as abandonment rates that I just mentioned, things associated with digital marketing, traditionally more e-commerce perhaps, but actually if you have a service that's targeting high net worth young professionals, for instance, the chances are they are finding and applying for financial products online. And the fact that it's not just your core banking processes that are instrumented, but probably also your digital marketing exercises is also something that we see as being relevant to the way that the market is going. And finally, another thing we see is the tools that companies large and small are using to build out their new digital platforms to drive their digital transformation. Things like containerization, SMS messaging, the new SaaS-based ways of monitoring a data center from Datadog. A lot of the new players, these are also our customers. So, Looker is very much embedded into this new world of digital platforms and services and helping them drive the supporting and enabling services forward as well as the top level business. Now, it's fantastic having all of this data, but it does create a problem. And the main way that we see that problem is that the combination of legacy systems for a traditional player, new platforms being rolled out by the company for their own products and services, leveraging a whole range of tools, Service Center, ServiceNow rather, in the service part, Salesforce for CRM, maybe you're using Marketo in marketing. So this huge rise in SaaS platforms as well. Normally, we end up with these islands of departmental data. Data that lives within Salesforce is perhaps difficult to combine and analyze with data from core banking. You know, that is something, the combination of CRM and core banking plus the marketing efforts is something you need to see a 360-degree view of the customer. But actually, data is tending to get a little bit trapped in these SaaS tools, and we've always had a bit of a challenge with siloed data inside of companies anyway. So let's talk about how Looker helps solve that problem with those silos of data through the lens of taking a quick skim through the history of BI. If you are someone at one of the major banks, there's a very good chance in the BI sector you already have one of the first wave of tools, the Cognoses, the MicroStrategies, the business objects of the world. They kind of were built on an assumption that the database is expensive. So you have an Oracle cluster, or you have Teradata, you have IBM DB2, you have that large data warehouse. On top of that, you deploy a BI tool, which has probably a semantic layer, whether you use a MicroStrategy modeling or a business objects universe or something like that. And then on top of that, you're providing the reporting services out in the form of dashboards and perhaps compliance reports and things like that. Now, that proved to be hugely valuable in a lot of ways, having that accurate data that could be relied on. But there was a downside, which was that data became inaccessible. The database was treated as a very valuable resource and but also very expensive. So getting new data into it could involve quite a long process of approvals and modeling and changes to the model itself. You will typically see inside an environment using one of these first wave tools that changes take weeks, if not months, to implement. The result of which is what we call the data breadlines. So you don't get things like that 85% employee adoption rate that we see at TransferWise, because it's simply not able to handle that range of data use cases. And we see these situations where someone needs something new. If there is a new question, if there is a new data source, they essentially have to get in line and wait until the more centralized team is able to support them. As a consequence of that kind of challenge, we saw this second wave of self-service departmental tools. So Excel spreadsheets remain the most popular form of kind of self-service analysis out there. A large number of companies, the majority of them, in fact, usually have a process or three that's still kind of trapped in spreadsheets. But we'll also see other examples of what we call the workbook approach in things like Tableau with Tableau workbooks, or Power BI with its PBX files and so on. These tools based on extracts and in-memory processing, solving specific problems like specializing in data visualization, for instance, or standalone data prep tools. And that results in this kind of, this rather convoluted spaghetti of systems. Certainly if you're in a large bank, we often say you probably have one of everything already. And if we put it out on a map, it's going to look something like what we see on the screen here. Now, again, this second wave proves something incredibly valuable, which is that self-service analysis is very valuable. Data visualization is extremely powerful, but there is a downside to it, which is no one can necessarily agree. And I'm sure we've all been in the kinds of meetings where people have their own workbooks, their own dashboards, their own spreadsheets, and on key metrics, we have different answers. Or we have the same answers, but we're not able to drill down into them in the same way. Just this general data chaos where instead of making a decision about what to do to move the business forwards, the entire conversation is about how to resolve the discrepancies or challenges in the data. And we think that leads up to what is now possible with the cloud platforms and architectures. So you can still might be deploying your own private cloud, but you've got new architectural options to combine the best of those two. So the centralized models, those semantic layers that give a consistent description of the data, that give you that governance and standards, combined with the flexibility of self-service tools and bringing in that new ecosystem of digital tools, and in particular the agile methods, the approaches to developing products incrementally and collaboratively and rapidly. We see that as the big opportunity that Looker presents to our customers. So the way that we are built is that we have at the bottom of the architecture, they're trying to get all of the data consolidated. So we're not actually talking about Looker just yet. We have what we call a 100% in-database architecture. So most popular with our customers will be the new cloud warehouses, so BigQuery, Amazon Redshift, Snowflake, and so on. We'll also see a lot of cases where new products are being built on PostgreSQL or MySQL. All of these, those are the most popular databases in the cloud world. And we also might connect into a Teradata or an Oracle server. But the general goal is let's have a small number of trusted data sources in which we can consolidate that data. And there are a lot of tools out there now, a complete revolution in the infrastructure with regards to data pipelines and so on, so that if you do have Salesforce data, if you do have ServiceNow, or if you're using Workday, if you're bringing in HR data, all of this is relatively straightforward to consolidate these days, so you can focus your pipelining efforts on the things that are most relevant to your business instead of reinventing the wheels for the standard tools. On top of that centralized data source, we build the Looker data platform. So our core product is a version-controlled modeling layer that defines not just the tables and fields within those tables that you have, not just describing the data schema within the database, but also the metrics that can be defined on those, and potentially multi-tiered SQL queries to build up a sophisticated analytical model of your company, and combining metrics between, say, your CRM data and your marketing data and your core banking systems to build up that comprehensive view of your customers. And then on top of that platform, we actually see ourselves as supporting three main categories of end solution. So the first of all is just best-in-class, modern, cloud-based business intelligence analytics. So the dashboard remains probably the primary format through which data is consumed. So we have the ability to build dashboards, but also the ability to drill in from those dashboards all the way down to the original transaction level data. So that's a big revolution in what is possible these days in business intelligence. Instead of the data being static, instead of it being a day old, instead of having a workbook that is limited to maybe 5 gigabytes of data, when you've actually got a 90 petabyte warehouse that you're running against, by using our in-database architecture and leveraging the new cloud platforms that are available, we are able to provide a modern dashboard with drill down all the way down to the raw information. And if you're interested in doing machine learning or data science, that ability to have both the business view of the data, but also drill all the way down to the granular data, which is going to represent the data set that you're going to use for machine learning. These are the critical changes in BI, the ability to work with the data volumes that are now present. We can also integrate nicely into other systems. So You don't have to use the Looker front end at all. You have an API for data underneath. And because we've got strong API capabilities, we're actually very good at pushing data into other systems. So a popular way of explaining that, because it's perhaps the simplest to explain, is if you have done that 360-degree view of your customer, you've looked at your customer data, you've combined it with some of your marketing data, it's on that basis that you might come up with new customer segments which are going to drive a marketing or advertising campaign. So you're looking to identify individuals either within your existing customers or potentially within your prospect list, and you want to do some form of campaign off that. Well, that data might come from a variety of places, but you ultimately need to send it to one place. Maybe you're sending it into Marketo or into Segments or driving some kind of email software. So we can integrate those systems, and we could have those processes either driven manually by the end user, make it easy to point and click and send that data along, or have it based on a dynamic schedule of some kind. So maybe it's something that you trigger at the start of each month to update that customer list. And then the third kind of data experience, as we like to call them, is just building things with Looker, but using your own application or portal to build Looker into. So we started at the start, this was one of the two big takeaways, business intelligence, or quite possibly using our secure and governed access to data. So the payments example was one of those. So the overall web application is something that's built by the company themselves. The dashboarding technology within that application is embedded by Looker because they don't need to build everything themselves. They can leverage some of the components we provide. And then some of the reporting capabilities where they want a specific streamlined user experience. When they talk about it, they said they wanted an Apple-like experience for their customers for the critical processes by which people are monitoring or making transactions. They have a custom-built tabular view of the data to work that way. So a real blend of using Looker as a platform to provide the secure data, to provide a consistency to the metrics, to be able to filter queries per individual customer, but building on top of that, on top of our platform, their own user experience, because they have a particular design that they want, they have branding requirements, they have an overall workflow that they want to implement that is completely different to traditional business intelligence. So we are the data platform in the background, the API for data that drives that through. And that wraps up my run through. I'm just going to check to see if we have any questions here that I might answer in the time we have left. Okay, so I've got a couple, one around just the databases we support. So we essentially support anything that speaks SQL. Our modeling engine can be thought of as a SQL generation engine. So as I mentioned, the most popular ones are where people are rolling out onto BigQuery or Snowflake, etc. But we will also support, for people that are doing on-prem, Teradata, IBM DB2, SQL Server, Oracle RAC clusters, and the like. So essentially anything that is providing structured or semi-structured data via a SQL interface. And that was the one that came through. So thank you all for joining me today. Thanks for your time. Hope to hear from you. Oh, one's just popped in. What's the volume of data we can handle? So essentially any size. So we will scale up to petabyte warehouses without any difficulty. That's the advantage of running directly against the cloud warehouse. We take advantage of partitioning and clustering techniques. So we essentially don't have any hard data limits. And we're very happy if you talk to us to introduce you to some customers who have been through that process of the largest databases. Quite often those are going to be in cloud environments, and we have comprehensive multi-client support, so we can live in GCP or in AWS or soon in Azure, and we can also run against multiple environments. And I'm afraid that is the time running out there. So I'm sorry, there were a couple more questions just coming in. You have my email address there on the screen. I'm happy to take any follow-ups from this. And thank you for your time today.